Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic, and in today's video we are going on tour together with Miners on Tour. It's a Morris Minor holiday organised by volunteers from the Morris Minor Owner Club. Now in this video it's going to be a selection of clips from different parts of the holiday all thrown together. Do I know what's going to happen? No. Did we miss our initial crossing? Yes, because this journey has been absolutely bonkers. We thought it was going to take about 2.5, maybe 3 hours to get from the Midlands to here, down at Folkestone for the Channel Tunnel, but it's taken us over 5 hours because guess what? The M25 was absolutely chocker, including this rather bizarre man that was waving to everybody on the bridge with his little flag. But anyway, lots going on. Join us now as we go through the tunnel and we officially begin our holiday and head off into France. So here's a cheeky heads up, because I read on Twitter that they were no longer letting people on the train, the Eurotunnel, if you missed your crossing. However, because everything was just going so badly wrong, we rang them up and they told us, well, the lady on the phone told me, that essentially as long as you arrived within the hour of the time you were due to board, so I think we were due to board about 5:30, as long as we were there before 6:30, we were okay to cross on the same thing. And she also told me that if you were going to miss your crossing, you could just pay £20 to move on to the next one. So look, if you are watching this and you're a little bit worried about the changing rules that they've put into the Eurotunnel, give them a call, but that's the advice we were given. And because it's so quick and it's so cheap compared to ferries, I don't think I would ever really go back to a ferry unless there was no other option. Right, I think it's time to cross and we'll get over into France, finally. Well, we are on the wide open péage ahead of us, and we left Calais about half an hour ago, and we're now on the big wide open road out to Rouen. I'll get Joe to spin the camera around just to show you the road that we're on and how little traffic there is. There is no one here, it's marvellous, although we have got a car that is about to come past us. Now the drive up to the péage was beautiful. This gorgeous bridge that just came in front of us, and it was lovely leading up to the péage. Now if you don't know what a péage is, let me explain it to you. So the way it works is you've got your standard roads in France where you don't have to pay, or you've got your péages, and your péages will get you there so much quicker. So we always use those if we're in a bit of a rush, and because we are losing the light and we're trying to get to Rouen and we're a wee bit tired, we're just going to crack on with those. So using these péages, we've got 104 miles ahead of us. Now if you've never been to France before, I'm going to give you my first tip. So first of all, when you're driving, if you're used to UK roads, we're on the other side of the road. So at home, when we're in the slow lane, we're always keeping to our left. When we're in France, it's the opposite, so we're on the opposite side of the road. So we're keeping to our right. So if you are doing this journey yourself, make sure you keep to the right, because otherwise you're going to have people up behind you that are flashing. People are ruthless. When you meet people out in France, they're so laid back, the culture is so laid back. As soon as they get on the wide open road, it's a completely different game. People are savage. So make sure you are keeping to the left as much as you can, and occasionally you'll see a crawler lane. If you're in something as leisurely as a Morris Minor, you can use the crawler lanes just like the lorries are using. So just a bit of intel there if you're doing this drive yourself. I hope you can hear me, by the way, because it is really quite noisy at times. So I've got my foot down. We're doing around 70 miles per hour, which is easy enough. Well, I say I've got my foot down. I haven't got my foot down all the way actually. But anyway, I've explained péages. I've explained keeping to the right. The other thing I want to tell you is do not mess around with speeding. It's not like at home where you might be able to get away with it a little bit. Over here it is very black and white, and they are so hot on speed limits, and you've got undercover gendarmes, which are like police, you've got everything. You've got hidden speed cameras. The speed cameras they've got are really discreet, so for goodness sakes, do not mess about. Now the way that I'm keeping a track of what speed I'm doing is I'm using Google Maps, and Google Maps has functionality to show you what speed you're travelling at. So I'm making sure using this that I'm not exceeding my speed limit, because whilst we have got kilometres on the speedo, it's very small and it's a far more secondary reading than the main miles per hour, and I don't want to have to keep trying to remember it. So again, it's just trying to take away some of that mental admin as I drive, so that I can just focus on driving and, more importantly, enjoying the road ahead. Now, as well as that, something I will tell you is, if you've never driven in France before and you are driving an older vehicle and you prefer to use E5 at home, you need to always make sure that you're using 98. I won't use anything else whilst we're over here. And yes, it is a little bit more costly, but the miles per gallon are higher as well, so I care a little bit less. And I'm on holiday, for goodness sakes. You expect to spend a little bit of money, don't you? And it's absolutely fine. And quite frankly, I don't mind spending a bit of money to use these roads, because look at them, they are empty. I'm not queuing, I'm not having to sit here overheating. It is wonderful and I'm loving every minute of it. The heater's working sort of okay. We did a few tweaks on it before I left, because it's not the best heater. But look, it's one of those things. My arm is slightly cold because I haven't got a jacket on, I haven't got a cardigan on, and there is a slight draft coming in through that door. But again, these are such small niggles about a car that was made before man landed on the moon. So I'm going to focus on the drive now. It's really important that I keep my eyes on the road ahead, and I'll hopefully catch up with you before we get to Rouen. Good morning, we're on to day 2, and I tell you what, I feel a lot more perky now than I did last night. Last night, oh my goodness, I ended up feeling really strange. We went to McDonald's because we couldn't find anywhere that was open. But first of all, before all of that, we had the petrol calamity. So we were driving along and we thought, well, we're going to see a petrol station soon, aren't we? Aren't we? And then we realised that we definitely weren't going to see a petrol station soon, and the needle was going further and further down on the fuel gauge, and I thought, oh my God. And the last time that I managed to get more than 220 miles out of the tank was years ago. And how many miles have we done since the last fill up, you ask? 237, and I thought, we must be on fumes. However, we get to the petrol station heroically, and we'd done 257 miles, and it ended up averaging that we'd done 42.9 miles per gallon. I have not had fuel consumption like that in years. So it was really great to get such great fuel consumption, and also really pleased that obviously the engine and the work that, all the tuning work that they've done at work on the engine, it's obviously all come to fruition, and thank God it did. But anyway, lesson learned, we're not going to let it get to that point again. But I tell you what, I definitely thought there were going to be more than, I think we've done nearly 100 miles or something, I don't know, I've just made that up. We've done loads of miles anyway before we found this petrol station. But there was no food options, so we ended up going to McDonald's, had a McDonald's, ended up feeling really ropey. I'll tell you what though, that was a humbling experience, because there we were driving through the drive-through. I've never done a French drive-through before, and the woman comes on the speaker and I'm like, right, okay, I have rehearsed my lines. I know what I'm going to say. Joe's having a big tasty meal, I'm having a veggie McSpicy, and then she says, hold on, in French, and I think, oh God, what have I done wrong? And she gets this other man to come on, and he essentially acted like I was speaking French like a dog was trying to speak English, and I thought, okay, this is a really humbling experience, because I have tried my best with this French and I actually don't think it's that bad. I'm not going to do it on camera because obviously I feel about this big now, because I've been on Duolingo for nearly 600 days, come on, and I got an A at GCSE. I'm not like someone that's just read a book and guessed how things are pronounced, but anyway, doesn't matter. So humbling experience to the drive-through. Then I felt like absolute, I felt like roadkill by the time we got here. Joe heroically did the last 34 miles or something, and now we're here in the rain. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go for a little jaunt around Rouen. I'll try and get some footage to show you what Rouen's like. Don't know what driving footage we can get, because when you're trying to film and water's going on the lens, it just looks horrendous. However, if it stops raining at the end of us exploring Rouen, I'll get a little bit of footage. And then from Rouen, we're going to go to the campsite and see all our friends, because as you know, so far, we've just been solo travellers. So come on, let's go and have a look around the flea market. Look, I am absolutely addicted to rifling through the belongings of people that have long left this earth. I love charity shopping, thrifting, flea market shopping, whatever you want to call it. I love going through all this stuff, because for me, stuff like this is so much better than just going down to your nearest department store and buying what everybody else has got. And the selection here, despite the bad weather, was absolutely wonderful. It was okay priced. It wasn't amazing, if I'm being truly honest. I felt like a lot of it was too close to commercial pricing for me to feel like it had a full flea market vibe. So we left that behind and we went and had a look around Rouen itself. Now, I always loved Beauty and the Beast as a child, and this is what Rouen gave me. It gives a real Beauty and the Beast vibe, from the buildings right through to the way that they've laid all the streets out with this river running through it. It is exquisite, and this is something that I would tell you actually, is if you are going to go and visit any of these French cities or towns that we recommend, when you walk round, look up as well as looking forward, because the architecture in France is absolutely gorgeous. And of course, the cathedral was yet another jewel in the crown of Rouen, and as you go inside you can see everything laid out. We've tried to be as respectful as possible whilst filming, so anybody who's praying or any activity that's going on, we haven't got that filmed. Now, we had a quick 3-4 hours there, absolutely incredible, and then we were back on the road because we needed to finally get to the campsite, because all the other boys were travelling in side valves and much smaller engine cars, and so we thought that they were going to be a lot slower. And look, it was a full case of tortoise in the hare, because we got a text from them saying, oh, we're only about 90 minutes away. And I thought, we're not. We're having crepes in a cafe, so we should probably get back on the road. So we headed back onto the auto routes. They are such a godsend. And then we fed down into some of the smaller towns and villages, because we wanted to have a bit of a homelier vibe. This was all going via tours as well, because we needed to get some groceries. Because here's the thing, if you're used to British supermarkets being open all the time, in France they have a much better grip on quality of life and work-life balance, and the supermarkets and the shops aren't open all the hours that the earth has put out there, which I think is actually a much better attitude than we perhaps have. And so it means that you have to be a little bit more organised. So we'd arrived at the campsite quite stressed because we were very late by this point, but also fully loaded up with all the snacks and bits and pieces that we thought we'd need for a few days ahead. Now, I will say as well that if you are a vegetarian and you haven't been to France for a while, every single year that I go, the vegetarian food selection gets better and better. Now, I know a lot of people say, why do you eat things that look like meat? But here's the thing, when everybody else is having a barbecue and you just want some veggie sausages to chuck on a barbecue or to eat, to just be the same as everybody else, it's perfect. So again, all the food that we ate, and I know this is going slightly off topic because we're still driving, but all the food that we have eaten on this trip is gorgeous. And this is a really weird thing to bring up, but garlic in the UK at the moment is really flavourless and stale, and I bought some garlic over there and wish I could have brought a load back. It's so fresh. But anyway, this is the campsite and we're travelling in, and it was so cheap for us to do this trip. It was less than £150 per person for the full week in our chalet. Now, I think that's blooming good going when you consider how much something like a Premier Inn or a Travelodge is for simply one night where you're just staying in quite a generic setting. This was absolutely heavenly. And because this is out of season in France at the moment, it's also very quiet. However, towards the end of the week, because they have Ascension Day on Thursday, which they celebrate, I think it's 40 days after Easter Sunday. I think that's the story behind it. They suddenly have all these bank holidays and then amazing days off, and the campsite fills with life and fills with people, and it's all very exciting. Now, as you can see here, these are the cars. We all made it unscathed, which was marvellous news indeed. And when you consider the age of the vehicles, it's quite something. And you know what else was quite something? The fact that we were dancing on stage, which is absolutely ridiculous. But you know what? We brought a bit of life to the campsite, because if you give us karaoke, we're going to get you going. And we had such a good laugh. And this was the thing, everybody else we met on the campsite was really good fun. All the French people, all the staff. And really, as many of you will know, life is what you make it. But the next day we were all very, very tired. Lots of driving, lots of partying, and we carried on with the charity blanket. So this was something that Roger and I have been working on for the MMOC charity auction for the Alzheimer's charity. Now, it wasn't plain sailing for everybody, because Moira and Steve had a few bits and pieces going on with their brakes. They'd had a couple of leaky brake cylinders, and Ryan stepped in to save the day and sort that out. And would you believe we were able to get both dot 4 and 2050 from the supermarket? So 2050 at Intermarché, and they had dot 4. I think was it called Ocean or Ocean? Someone will know what the correct pronunciation is for the supermarket. But Ryan pushed on in the drizzle and the rain and got the car sorted, because people on the campsite, everybody brings spare bits and pieces. The rest of us, while Ryan toiled away, carried on eating lots of crisps, lots of bread, and just having a lovely social, because whilst it's a car holiday, it's also very much about catching up with old friends. And in the evening, they do activities for you all, and I love this. It's everybody chips in, everybody does something, and my contribution, and if any of you joined me during lockdown, you might remember I did it. We did bingo. So I did bingo, and I used a little bingo generator on my phone, because there was no way I was bringing a big old bingo machine with me. So this was our little group. There were a good 12 of us, and we did everything together, and it was really special, because these are sometimes people that we don't see throughout the entire year. Now, I thought I would show you a little bit of driving footage as well, because of course, if I'm being brutally honest, at the start of the video, the driving footage that you got to see was mainly auto routes, because all we cared about was just trying to get to the campsite. We said, we're going to be doing lovely sedate driving all week. What matters now is just getting to the campsite. So I wanted to show you some of these French roads, and how mad is it? Their roads are so much better than ours, in terms of even the country roads aren't full of potholes, and you don't appreciate how nice it is to drive on a smooth road until you get back and you're back on British roads and you think, oh, why are our roads so terrible? But look, it's a small gripe, because we are so lucky to live in a country where we don't have to worry about war and famine and all the rest of it. So I probably shouldn't really moan about potholes. It comes across as wholly ungrateful. Now, I think it's time for us to go and investigate another little French town. One of the greatest blessings in life about having a really adventurous little friend group that you go on holiday with is you get to explore places that are just absolutely wonderful. And Amboise was absolutely no exception to this. I can't remember how we ended up here. I think somebody might have suggested it. And here's the thing, this is the way that we always do it. There are trips, if you've never been on Miners on Tour, that you can dip in and out of. So if something's going on that you don't particularly fancy going to, there's no, it's one of the things I really like actually, there's no kind of, oh, you know, you need to feel guilty for missing out. It's very much, we're doing this, if you want to come, you can come along, and you can offer other people to come on trips with you as well. So I think this was the day that everybody else went to the vineyard, but I don't drink, and the boys weren't really keen to go either. So we decided to go here to Amboise, and it was so lovely. Again, like that architecture that we saw in Rouen, it's got that kind of wood fronting. It's just, oh, it's superb. It really is. It was so beautiful. And this is the thing that I love when you go and explore some of these little French towns, is everything looks so very unique and wonderfully laid out. Now, after we'd had lunch there and we'd done a bit of exploring, we headed off to what we thought was a model village. But here's the thing, we obviously didn't read that far into it, because what I didn't realise was it was all chateaus. I thought we were going to actually see some model villages, but in for a penny, in for a pound, or €1 in this case. And I actually ended up quite enjoying this, and you got to read all about the different chateaus and find out about them. And the chateau that we're going to see coming up was featured as well. There were lots of different bits and pieces that were going on. They'd even laid out all the gardens, and for some unknown reason they also had these weird horses that you could ride, and I'm actually going to make myself cough laughing again because it was hilarious. We ended up playing on these and we got so into it we ended up having a little bit of an accident. Anyway, we then got back in time for the quiz, just about, and then the very next day we headed off to Tours. Now this was a little bit more cosmopolitan because of course everywhere that we'd gone with our group so far had been very rural, it had been very relaxed, whereas Tours is a bigger, I think it classes as a city because it's got the cathedral, and again an exquisite place to visit because whilst you've got all that rural architecture, heading into somewhere like Tours you can see things like, look at this train station for example. Goodness me, it took my breath away. I was there for a good 10 minutes having a look around it. I thought it was so beautiful, and I love all the ornate stone carving and all the effort that goes into it. I just think it's really special, and when you're visiting these places you've got to go and see them. And as I always say, when you go into these places, don't just look ahead of you or look down, look up as well, because there is just so much detail and so much thought and so much beauty in all these places, and it's so very worthwhile visiting. And now I have been to Tours before, but I didn't manage to get into the cathedral last time, so I got in and I also filmed it to show you as well. Now the next bit of footage is a little bit cheeky. I don't know where it's come from. I found it on my phone. There were 300 clips to edit for this, and look, it featured some Morris Minors. It was a really great shot, so I've popped it in. If it's your video, I'm really sorry. I'll get you a drink next time we go out. So after all of that, we had Le Meal, and then we headed back to our chalet for an impromptu party that we hadn't really planned. And neither had we planned to do the whole routine to Saturday night by Wigfield, but here we are. And you can tell that I was asleep because I'm doing this in my pyjamas, which is absolutely ridiculous. Next up was a trip to Chateau de Cande. Now, if you've ever heard of this and you're thinking, that name really rings a bell, well, it's because Chateau de Cande is where Edward, Duke of Windsor, married Wallis Simpson. Because of course they didn't get married in the UK because of all the fracas that went on, and then Cecil Beaton went over and he took their wedding photographs. So if you've ever seen their wedding photographs, they're all taken at Chateau de Cande, and goodness me, it was an occasion from the minute we went through the gates. You know, the drive up to the site was absolutely exquisite, and it had all been sorted out for us to go and to park our cars in front of the chateau. This was something that the MOT organisers, Ali and Ian, sorted out for all of us, and because our group is so big, there are over 70 cars on this trip, they sorted it into 2 visit slots, so one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and we took it for, I think we took the afternoon slot. But anyway, it was just absolutely lovely, and the weather wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold, and it was just lovely to drift through the day, enjoy it. We went on a little run because we couldn't do a big massive drive, and it meant that we just got to enjoy it. And this is one of the great things. If you've never done Miners on Tour, I thoroughly recommend doing it. If you've always organised your own holidays, you've had to find everything, because whilst there's no pressure to go on all the organised activities, I'll tell you what, it's so nice that somebody has actually sorted it all out, so you can just turn up, pay your money, go on a trip and have a really great day out, and know that somebody sorted things like the parking, they've thought about, you know, are there any food options, they'll let you know, and all of that stress is taken away from you. So for me, I really like that element of MOT. When I was younger, I always used to think it was a bit Saga holiday-ish, if I'm truly honest. And then 2 or 3 years in, I started really appreciating it because my day job got more complicated and Anyway, let's talk about Chateau de Cande, because this is a really beautiful chateau. Now, it's no longer owned by any landed gentry. I believe it's owned by the equivalent of like the local council or whatever, because it got handed over, I think, in the 1970s. But it's got some really great tech inside. Also, it's got that. So the Edward and Wallace graffiti, they wrote their names in the wall, I think with permission. Anyway, this was a really beautiful place. It had the most exquisite layout inside, and it retains all its original detail, or the vast majority of it, with a few bits and pieces faithfully reproduced. And also, they had the most beautiful bathrooms, and the bathrooms were on an American system whereby the bath will fill up within 1 hour. It was also one of the first places to have a telephone in the local area, so it connected to tours, which we've already seen. And all the way back, I chanced my arm because I really wanted to try and get in here. And I wish I could tell you there was going to be a really cool story and I was going to show you these cards, but the owner said to me no, even when I showed him my Morris Minor. So instead, we headed back to the campsite and we had a big old party, and we invited pretty much everyone that we were really good pals with on the trip, because why wouldn't you? Life's a party. And they do something called branch night, and the idea used to be was you invited all the people from your local branch. In my first year, I joined West Sussex because I had a few friends in it, and now the West Sussex contingency, I guess, has grown, and it's an enormous group of pals from all over the UK, and we all have a fabulous time together. There were no sore heads, however, because the next day we were off to a vide grenier. Now, if you've never been to one of these, it's a little bit like a car boot sale, and the French are really organised because at the start of the year they produce a book, and they have all of them inside, so you can look up your local area and find them, and they list where they are, how many traders are expected to be there, and what type of stuff they're going to have there. So I knew that this one was going to have antiques, house clearance, bric-a-brac, and I knew that there were going to be over 300 traders. So I thought, this is going to be a good one. And oh my goodness, this was one of, I'm just going to call it a car boot. This was like the best car boot that I have been to in months. I bought some really great bits. I bought a mid-century coat hangery wall hooky thing. I got for €10. I got a clock for €20. I got a 1970 saucepan that had barely been used for €2. I got some mixing bowls, some bright orange ones from the 70s for a couple of euros. If you're coming over, make sure you check out a vide grenier. Now, the day sort of went downhill for me from here, because I ended up with the worst headache and I felt really, really poorly. So this was a lovely area. And goodness me, I'll put an overlay on for you to tell you where it was, but I can't remember what it was called. And it was a recommendation from James Walsh at Practical Classics, and he said, you have got to go here. And wasn't Chamois, where was it? Anyway, I've done an overlay, so I don't need to stress myself remembering. And it was such a shame, because I would have really liked to have come back here. Was it Chinois? It was Chinois. So I really wanted to come back here and explore, but we simply ran out of time, and I was really poorly on this day. And so we drove in, and I thought, right, I'll get some headache tablets and it'll make me feel better. But it just wasn't passing. So this is probably my biggest regret of the trip, is that James had sent me loads of beautiful photographs of this town, and I had so wanted to see it, and I'd really been pushing for it. And it had been where the boys had been canoeing earlier in the day. So for those of us that didn't go canoeing, it was really easy for us to meet them straight afterwards. So it all should have added up, and it didn't. And this is probably the sad bit of the trip for me. But I'll tell you what wasn't sad. I got to see this. Hold on, let me just clip on to the next clip for you and show you. I got to see this Citroen, and oh my goodness, absolutely love this. So this is a great thing, okay? The French love a classic car, and they also love markets. So as my headache was progressing and I was trying to scramble around for some headache tablets in all the pharmacies which were closed, I did have a look around all the food. Now this is something that the French do so well, is they have all these markets, and they have fresh fruit, fresh veg, fresh food, and it just makes eating such a pleasure because everything is so flavoursome and is so rich and inviting. I've had a wonderful week of eating. It was wonderful. Oh, it was just brilliant. So then after that, we came back. So I had a little nap and then we had a group photograph. So they got all the cars that were on the trip. They invited all the Morris Miners and the classic cars and said, come on down and have a photograph at the chateau. So this chateau was owned by the campsite owner, but it's so sad. Tragedy had struck. So it's their family chateau. And I believe it was either last year or the year before, there was a fire inside. So sadly, it burnt all inside. Now, there might be some people that put up footage of the inside, because I know a couple of people poked their heads around the door. But at the end of the day, it was somebody's home, and I feel that's really disrespectful for me to put that up. So whilst they allowed us to film outside, and I'll show you that as well, I am not including any shots of the inside, because I'll tell you what, if something happened to my house and my house burnt down, I wouldn't want someone poking their head in and filming all of it and having a look inside. But the one thing I will say is that it had all of this vintage wallpaper inside. Oh my goodness, it was very pretty. You could see through the window, and they had said we could have a look through the window. So this was all the cars, and you might be shocked at how many Morris Miners are here. But look, this is one of the great things about Miners on Tour, is that lots and lots of people turn up, and you'll also notice there are number plates from as far away as Andorra and Norway. That's right, these people drove them, they didn't trailer them. So if you're one of those Morris Minor owners that's frightened of driving, say 50 or 100 miles, use these people as your inspiration to go a few miles further than you ever have done before, because we had a very good success rate. I would say the vast majority of people got there without more than maybe a slight hiccup or two. Us, well, we were unscathed. Although since editing this video, I have had a coil die on the car. But this is what happens when you use a new one, because I didn't realise I had a new coil on the car, but I don't know when I put that on. Anyway, this is the chateau that had burned down. It's quite a sad loss. Now, I thought you might also want to see some of these cars in action and see them coming past. So what I'll do is I'll go quiet and you can have a little listen to some of the cars, and then I'll catch up with you and show you the next instalment, which is us going back to the blanket. a massive thank you to my friend Roger here, because without his help saving my bacon and stitching all these squares together, we wouldn't have got the entire project done. And it was so worthwhile doing, because it raised £75 for the chosen charity this year, and 75 quid is a decent amount of money to be getting going with for charities. The boys meanwhile carried on chomping through all the snacks that we had, because we certainly had plenty, before we headed off to watch Michael Jackson performing with children, one of the more wild acts of the campsite. Now, I also thought I would include some chats with the vehicle owners in our chalet. So, Richard, take it away.
Hello, it's Richard, one of Steph's recurring characters on the channel. If you've watched Steph's 2025 Moggy Fest video, you will have seen this car before. This is my turquoise 1956 Morris Minor 1000 saloon. I've had this car since 2017, but I feel a bit guilty because I haven't really taken it on very many sort of trips. So I did one trip up to the NEC and a few little local trips, but I haven't really done any long trips in it, and it'd been off the road. So I was determined to bring it on this trip this year. To do that, I did have to do quite a bit of prep work to it, and I was helped, very, very kind really, very generous. I was helped by my good friend Roger, another one of Steph's friends, who doesn't live very far from me, and together we tackled a lot of the things that we needed to do on this car to prepare it for the trip. So I hadn't driven it in about 6 years. The master cylinder had failed, all the brake cylinders, all the wheel cylinders were seized, it wasn't running right, various other little electrical sort of gremlins as well. So what we did, got it in, up on the ramp, and as I say, just went through the braking system. So remade all the pipes, did the master cylinder, which obviously is a bit of a challenge in these, but if you've got a ramp it does make it easier. And then obviously all the wheel cylinders. The brake shoes actually I didn't replace because all of them had a lot of meat on them, and I do find some of the modern shoes, some of the kind of like sort of unknown brands, sort of brand new ones, can be a bit not very good. So I didn't actually replace the shoes, I just sort of cleaned them up. So got all the brakes right and bled it all, and that was all good. It ran, it started, but wasn't that great. So we did the timing, and it was a bit retarded. We had to advance the timing, and just got it running, you know, just with the carb and stuff, cleaned that and kind of adjusted the mixture. Did the tappet clearances, they needed a bit of adjustment. So just all these little things just to sort of make it run a lot better. And then just little electrical things. I think the horn had stopped working. What else is a bulb on one of the headlamps, nothing major, but just lots of little things to go through. And then it was all your typical stuff, so all your servicing, so all your fluids, you know, your engine oil filter, you know, gearbox oil, or your grease points. Obviously with these, they've got, you know, lots of grease points, especially on the front suspension, on those trunnions, your upper and lower trunnions. So all of that sort of stuff, and yeah, we just kind of chipped away at it, and I had it running and driving probably about a month and a half before this. So I gave myself about, you know, 4 or 5 weeks of kind of running in time, where we still had jobs to do on the car, but it was a running driving car, because I think it's important before you go on a trip like this to actually, you know, you need to take the car out on journeys and kind of do shakedown, and you know, if there's anything that crops up, then you can do it before you go on the trip. I mean, it's not absolutely perfect. I do need to clean a bit of the underside, and I want to kind of rust protect the underside. It hasn't got anything underneath it at the moment, and there are a few little tweaks, but in the whole, it runs nicely, stops, you know, everything electrical works on it. It's got new tyres. We did do new tyres as well. These are brand new tyres, because the tyres that are on it, the front ones were okay, but the rears were quite cracked. So put them on, got the wheels balanced as well. And that was it really. You know, it was a case of, okay, this is the one we're bringing. So got to the start of this holiday, brought it on down to Portsmouth, met up with Ryan and Aaron in the Tourer, went over on the crossing, and just gently, you know, sort of jaunted our way down to the campsite. But it's been good as gold so far. Been absolutely lovely.
My name's Ryan. You may have seen me in a couple of other videos of Steph's. I've been friends with her for, oh God, well over 10 years now. Anyway, I've brought my Morris Minor Series MM Tourer, which is a convertible basically, but they called it a Tourer because it's got these removable side screens. It's got a little 918cc side valve engine, which I rebuilt last year, and it's so far been really good. Hasn't really burnt much oil at all. You know, we've been out on days out with 4 people in it, and it's been absolutely fantastic. In terms of prep work, I rebuilt the engine last year, so I wasn't too worried about the internals, but you know, did an oil change and, you know, that sort of thing. I did, the car was misfiring actually a couple of months ago, and it turned out to be an extreme amount of wear in the distributor, and I was having pinking when under load and so on. But having had that rebuilt, the car has performed absolutely brilliantly, and none of those issues have returned. So yeah, apart from making sure that I've got spare oil, which I haven't really had to use, and a bottle of coolant, which I haven't had to use, despite the very hot weather, yeah, I haven't really had to do much preparation, and just make sure that all of the, you know, trunnions and so on have been greased, and that the car is filled with oil and coolant.
Well, I'm inherently spoilt because I didn't really do too much of my own prep, which is terrible, isn't it? I did wash her and sort everything out and make sure all the levels were fine. But the boys that work at ADO Restoration were determined to have a break from me for a week. I think they're probably sick of hearing me going, have we done this? Have we done that? Where are we with this? And probably just thought we'll do everything we can to make sure Steph is out of the office for a week and does not come back early. So they very kindly, goodness me, what did they do for me? Because I've been ever so busy. They serviced the car for me, they checked everything. We adjusted the exhaust again because the exhaust is new. But realistically, I haven't used Nancy that much this year for many different reasons. Many of you know there's a lot going on at home with home stuff. And so I just haven't been out in Nancy as much as I would like. And I guess the only real proper test to see what would happen was going to Rosie's funeral, as many of you know that I went to, and I think it was about 120 miles each way, and so it was around, in the end I think I did around 300 miles in one day going to and from the funeral. And there were no real problems apart from the exhaust was blowing, and we thought, oh yeah, we'll give it a service anyway, because I like to give it a service. And I also put a fresh MOT on it, not because I didn't trust the work that my colleagues had done, but because I don't always trust, ever the pessimist here clearly, that the police aren't going to stop me and ask where an MOT is on the car. Because of course, if you're watching this from abroad, you may not know this, but classics of a certain age that have not been extensively modified, there's some old wording around this anyway, but essentially if your classic is pretty much bob on as it was when it first left the factory in terms of running gear, and you haven't made any substantial changes to the chassis and things like that, you don't have to MOT your classic. Now, many of you know how I feel about this as well, but I'm not going to bring that up again in this video because people love to get really nasty about it. But I like to keep my classics MOT'd. I like having a second set of professional eyes that are unbiased across the car. And the weirdest thing about it was I'd been getting my MOTs somewhere else, and obviously I just took it down to the nearest one in Halifax, the one that we use for work, and I don't know what has happened on the system. I'm going to have to contact DVLA, but it's wiped off the previous like 3-4 years. So I don't know. I've got all the certificates still, so it's fine, but I couldn't believe that happened. It was really weird. Anyway, pleased to say nothing has been untoward. And of course I have got that new engine in, and the new engine has been pretty much bang on. I don't really have anything to complain about, and as many of you know, I love complaining. And we have not even used a drop of petrol, and we're getting around 40 to 42 on the MPG, which is awfully good going because quite often we've been loaded up with people, loaded up with stuff. There's an awful lot going on. Looking forward to another solid day of adventuring today, and then tomorrow is obviously off home, which is really depressing because the weather isn't going to be like this. It's nearly 30 degrees today, which is just ever so lovely, and it's nice to break out some of my sunny weather clothing. Right, let's go and see what else is going on. And then, just like that, the trip was pretty much over. It was our last day, and I was so annoyed because the weather was incredible, and I thought, ugh, why has this weather been all week? It was between 29 and 31 degrees all day, which on paper and when we were at the campsite was really nice. But once you're out in the car and you're sitting on those vinyl seats and you're trying to navigate a tiny little road and the car's like, and you just think, oh God, it's so hot. And you have to pop the heater on just to cool it down because you're suddenly superstitious. You just think, oh, actually, maybe 25 would be better. But I'm not going to complain because there wasn't a cloud in the sky and it was just glorious. The weather was beautiful. And what were we doing? Were we going to a beach? No, of course not. We were going to a museum indoors, Museum Maurice de Fresnay. And from what I can gather, and I did a bit of reading about the museum before we went and after we went, because whilst we were walking around, I was reading about all the exhibits. Maurice de Fresnay was essentially a collector of things that he absolutely loved. And you're going to see some, I've filmed the more sedate things because I was looking and I thought, if I include that, am I going to get in trouble with YouTube? So I'm telling you what one of the things was where I thought, will I get in trouble? With these weird little shrunken head wax modelly things. And I thought, they're giving me nightmares just looking at them now. I think if any children watch this, I think it's just going to send them over the edge. So I just thought, no, I won't put it in. There are also weapons, and I don't think we're allowed to show weapons on YouTube. So anyway, I thought I would focus mainly on the vehicles. And there was some really cool stuff here. There were planes, tanks, boats, cars, tractors, lorries. And there were also some really great bits and pieces that I'd never seen before. And that for me is always what I enjoy most about a museum, is seeing new stuff and educating myself on all these new bits and pieces. And then finally, it was time for the final hurrah. So we said goodbye to everybody and they handed out awards for people that had done really well. Naturally, Ryan got one for doing those breaks in the rain. So well done, Ryan. After that, we cleaned the chalet and the next morning we were back on the open road, or should I say the open péage, because look, I'm not being funny, we're not going to travel back those country roads. We did the whole lot on the way back in one go. So if you remember at the start, we broke the trip and we stopped in Rouen. This time we did it all the way back to the Channel Tunnel, and then we did it all the way back to the West Midlands all in one day. It ended up being over 600 miles, but not before a stop at the McDonald's in, oh, what was it called? Coquel. And the food was really nice. And I know that you're all going to laugh at me, but I'd really wanted a McDonald's. The one we had before was awful. And I thought, I'm not leaving France with a bad McDonald's. I do like to try them around the world, which is probably a little bit of a silly thing to do, but it's one of those things. So anyway, by this point, we were loaded down with snacks and wine for other people. And if you haven't been to France for a while, they have got some mad crisp flavours. So we've got plenty to be munching our way through. But I was so sad to say goodbye because France is, for me, one of the most beautiful countries in the world. The people are so friendly. Everything's worth doing. And if you're thinking about coming, next year's the year to do it. Oh, we're on the Eurotunnel, which means there's one final destination, and that is home. My goodness, what an amazing week we've had, and it's been really nice to share it with you because the way that we've done it has been really different to how we've done stuff before. So you've had me voicing over all the way through, talking to you as though it's like we're on a phone call at the end of the holiday, and I'm running through all the amazing things that we've done. And I've tried to show you the video clips as almost a scrapbook of all the fantastic places we've seen and the memories that we've made. And I hope in years to come I watch it back and I get reminded of all the things that I've forgotten about in between. But it has been truly the very best week of my year, as it always is. It's never not the best week of my year. It's brilliant. And I have so much fun with my friends, and you're not clock watching like you do when you just meet up for a Saturday. You see your friends that live hundreds of miles away and you get to spend lots of time with them and have tea with them and do days out with them. And whilst it is a car holiday on paper, it's mainly about the people you meet, the friendships you get, and just the brilliant time that you have together. It truly is like nothing else that you can do. And for me, Miners on Tour is a priceless holiday. If you want to come and do it next year, you just need to contact the Morris Miner Owner Club and they'll give you all the details for next year. So even if you're watching this in 2026, 27, 28, or whenever you're watching it, contact them and they'll give you all the details. Last but not least, I want to say thank you to all my friends that I shared a chalet with. My friends Moira and Steve, they're really good fun. Colin, Phil, Harry, Scarlett. Goodness me, Jane, Gavin, all our lovely friends that we make and meet through MOT, and most importantly, the key organisers, which are Ian and Ali Howard and their son Dylan. Realistically, without them, this week wouldn't have happened. It's been great. I hope you've enjoyed what we've shared. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and if you've been on the fence about coming, please come next year, because trust me, you will not be disappointed. Well, I think we're not that far off coming off the tunnel now, so I'm going to say goodbye to you, and until next time, take care and drive safely.